been dubbed Duchess difficult again. There have been allegations of bullying.
Tyrant in high heels.
The
Sussexes are continuing their war. They are all the time looking for a way to needle and to discomfort.
For them now in Montecito, there's a moment of grave concern because stripping the royal family of title.
Tom Bower just uncovered something that doesn't make sense, and oh, it's sending shockwaves everywhere. Listen, when you check the official records, Meghan Markle is listed as 44 years old. Fine, right? Except there's this old magazine tucked away from 1997, and it tells an entirely different story. And when her own father started recalling the years he remembers from raising her, the birthdays, the school plays, the early auditions, nothing matched. This isn't a typo, it's a 6-year gap. 6 years that completely changed the story. Her graduation, her acting start, even the age she was during some of the most famous moments of her life. And if the timeline doesn't fit, then how does the rest of her story hold up? Because once you start tugging on that one loose thread, the whole thing starts to unravel. When most people think of Meghan Markle, they see the polished duchess, the Hollywood actress who became royalty, the woman living the fairy tale life, the modern princess who seemed to have it all. But Tom Bower wasn't buying that glossy picture anymore. Something about it felt off. He couldn't shake the feeling, so he started digging, really digging into archives, public files, records no one ever thought to check. And what he found didn't just raise eyebrows, it flipped the narrative upside down. The public was sold this perfectly packaged image, every detail polished, every milestone timed to perfection. But somewhere between Los Angeles and London, between the acting headshots and the royal portraits, the math stopped working. The timeline everyone repeated magazine after magazine, article after article suddenly looked cracked. And these weren't tiny cracks you could ignore. They were the kind that split the whole foundation. And this isn't coming from some blogger spinning theories from a basement. This was real research, someone methodically cross-checking records, comparing birth years, graduation dates, and casting credits side by side. He wasn't guessing, he was verifying. And every single time he laid one document beside another, the story shifted again. The palace's official records didn't match older documents collecting dust in forgotten files. The ages listed at major milestones completely inconsistent depending on which version you looked at. We're not talking fuzzy memories or a misquoted interview from 20 years ago. We're talking printed records, official documents, the kind of things that are supposed to be set in stone. And instead of bringing clarity, they brought chaos. Two completely different versions of one life. And not just a 1-year or 2-year difference, a full 6 years. 6! That's not a rounding error. That's an entirely new person. If the older documents are right, Meghan might not be the age everyone believes she is. She could be significantly older, which changes everything. The wedding, the career, the timing of everything she did, it all shifts when you move the clock by 6 years. Were those the decisions of a woman in her mid-30s or someone quietly approaching 40? That difference changes how the public sees ambition, opportunity, and timing, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Then comes the moment that stings the most, her father, Thomas Markle. When he talks about Meghan, his voice doesn't carry the usual parental pride. It carries weight, a sadness, even. Like a man who's been watching a story unfold that doesn't match the one he lived. He remembers every stage of her childhood. The school plays, the teenage auditions, the early dreams. He was there for all of it. The graduations, the first headshots, these aren't distant memories, they're lived moments. But once Meghan became famous, once her image was everywhere, Thomas began noticing the differences. The years didn't match what he remembered. The ages she gave publicly didn't fit. The timeline he lived through simply didn't align with the one being sold to the world. And Thomas wasn't ranting in tabloids. He spoke slowly, measured, a father choosing every word carefully. And one thing he's hinted, more than once, is that his daughter isn't as young as the palace made her seem. That the official year of birth might have been adjusted somewhere along the way. Coming from a father that hits different, that's not internet gossip. That's someone who held the baby, who lit the birthday candles, who knows the real years because he was there. When your own father says those dates don't fit, something starts to crumble. Either the palace version is off, or the father's memories are. And between the two, who seems more grounded? He's not accusing her of lying about her education or work. He's saying the timing itself doesn't make sense. And timing is everything when your public story is built on milestones. If the foundation doesn't line up, everything above it starts wobbling. Fathers don't misremember 6-year gaps. They don't confuse whether their daughter was 15 or 21 during big life moments. So if he's right, somewhere out there must be records that back him up, papers created before the fame, before the royal title, before there was any need to manage the image. And then it gets wild. March 1997 17 magazine. Every teenage girl's dream issue back in the day, stuffed into lockers and backpacks. Inside, on page 90, there's a small list of young hopefuls trying to break into Hollywood. And right there it says Meghan Markle, age 21, nothing dramatic at first glance. But do the math, if she was born in August 1981, as every official record claims, she would have been 15 at that time, not 21. That's a 6-year difference, printed in black and white, sitting in stores across America, long before anyone knew her name. It's not a rumor, it's ink on paper. You can still find that magazine today, open it, and see it for yourself. Age 21. It's still there, untouched, unchanged, archived. So what does that mean? If that magazine entry is right, if whoever submitted her information back then gave an accurate age, then Meghan's real birth year wouldn't be 1981. It would be closer to 1975 or 1976. That means when she started acting, she wasn't a young 20-something. She was almost 30 in an industry where even 25 feels too old to start. And when she married Prince Harry, she wasn't 36, she could have been in her early 40s. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it changes how the story feels, doesn't it? The world was told about a younger woman, a fairy tale romance, a glowing young duchess. But if she was older, every headline, every photo op, every modern royal love story takes on new meaning. That single page from 17 didn't just show a different number, it cracked the illusion. Because it's not some fan theory, it's a primary source printed decades before she was famous, and that's what makes it so hard to brush off. Either the magazine made an incredible mistake, or someone's records got adjusted later on. There's no middle ground. And if that's true, if those missing 6 years are real, then it reshapes everything. The career timeline, the carefully staged introductions, even the public narrative of her pregnancies. Because, let's be honest, in Hollywood, 6 years can make or break how you're presented. One document says 1,981, the other suggests 1,975. That's not just an error, that's two completely separate lives, two versions of one woman's story. And here's where the gossip really starts to swirl, because Tom Bower didn't stop at the age discrepancy. Oh no. He went further. He began connecting that 6-year mystery to everything that came after, especially the pregnancies, the births, and the stories that surrounded them. Because if Meghan was 6 years older than we were told, then suddenly the timelines around Archie and Lilibet start looking peculiar. And that's exactly where Tom's investigation took a sharp turn, from the archives to the delivery room. What he found there made even insiders whisper that maybe, just maybe, the fairy tale version wasn't the real one after all. Tom Bower's investigation didn't stop with dusty archives or forgotten magazines. It spilled right into the heart of Meghan's most guarded secret, motherhood. And this is where the timeline starts to bend in ways no one expected. If that 6-year gap is real, it doesn't just change her resume, it changes the story of her pregnancies, the one the palace presented as picture perfect. Bower found someone who actually worked inside London's Portland hospital, someone who knew how that place ran. And what they said, quietly, almost fearfully, didn't match Prince Harry's version in Spare. Harry described it like a dream scene, candles glowing, calm voices, 2 epidurals, and within 2 hours the couple supposedly drove back home to Frogmore Cottage. 2 hours! Anyone who's ever had a baby or even visited a maternity ward knows that's not just fast, it's impossible. Portland Hospital isn't a spa, it's one of the strictest maternity units in Britain. You don't just give birth, stand up, and stroll out. The drive alone to Windsor takes almost an hour on a good day. So what happened to all the post-birth checks? The monitoring? The paperwork? The epidurals alone take hours to wear off. Doctors reading the account laughed, then frowned, because epidurals aren't something you get twice. It's a continuous line, not 2 separate jabs like painkillers. So what Harry described, medically, doesn't exist. And here's where the gossip world started buzzing, because Meghan's pregnancy had reportedly been labeled high risk, the clinical term geriatric pregnancy. Not insulting, just medical fact for mothers over 35. That means extra supervision, constant monitoring, no wellness spa setups with candles and birthing balls. The description in Spare sounded more like a movie scene than a hospital protocol. Nurses and obstetricians who saw that passage said flatly, it couldn't have happened that way. Then came whispers of preeclampsia, a dangerous spike in blood pressure. If that was true, there's no way she would have been discharged so quickly. Women with that condition stay under observation for days, sometimes longer. Magnesium drips, blood pressure checks, every 15 minutes. It's grueling, not glamorous. And yet the public got a neat little timeline. Birth, recovery, home within 2 hours. Not a wrinkle, not a flaw, not a single photo from the hospital hallway. Everything just too perfect. That's when the insider's words hit hard. It sounded staged. They said it quietly, but the implication was thunderous. Maybe it wasn't about reality at all, maybe it was about image. The palace releases what looks serene, controlled, and ideal, but under that surface, the math collapses again. The timeline doesn't add up, not medically, not logistically. And if Meghan was 6 years older than claimed in her early 40s, not late 30s, then all those miracle details start to make sense. Or rather, they stop making sense entirely. The drive, the epidurals, the glowing departure, it all fits the same pattern that Tom Bower kept uncovering. A story polished to perfection, smoothed so clean that truth gets lost somewhere beneath the gloss. And when the palace stays silent, refusing to clarify, refusing even to deny, that silence sounds like confirmation. By the end of his investigation, Bower laid out the evidence side by side, the 1997-17 magazine listing that made her 21 when official records say 15, the father's memories that match that older age, the impossible birth timeline that only works if you erase 6 years from her life. It's like watching two parallel worlds, one public, one hidden, colliding in real time. Maybe the 6-year mystery is just an accident buried in paperwork. Maybe it's not. But once you see the inconsistencies, the numbers that don't align, the moments that can't coexist, you can't unsee them. Every photo, every headline, every royal announcement suddenly looks like part of a story built to fit, not a story built to be true. And that's the real shock Tom Bower left hanging in the air. If the fairy tale was crafted so carefully, was it ever meant to survive real scrutiny? Or was it always a performance, one written, edited, and timed 6 years too late? Either way, the cracks are showing. And once a fairy tale cracks, it never quite looks magical again.